As we've been discussing today, this has been another big and busy week here in our nation's capital. From the all-nighters on Capitol Hill that led to the one big beautiful bill passing the House by one big vote. Well, the week has been, quite busy. Joining me now to bring their insights to a number of issues is our panel of FRC experts. Quena Gonzalez, FRC Senior Director of Government Affairs, and Jared Bridges, the Editor-in-Chief of the Washington Stand. Jared, Quena, thanks for joining me today.
Good to be back.
So Jared, I want to start with you first. I just finished a conversation with Elon Carr, former envoy for anti-Semitism in the previous Trump administration. You know, just blocks from FRC last night, 2 staff members from the Israeli embassy were shot and killed. What can you tell us about the victims of this senseless crime?
Yeah, Tony, the more you look into this, the more heartbreaking this is. The 2 victims were Yaron Leshinsky and Sarah Lynn Milgram. Yaron was 30 and Sarah Lynn was 26. They were engaged or planning to be engaged. Yaron had bought a wedding ring and planned to propose very soon in Jerusalem. So this is very poignant in how it brings forth the victims of terror. These are people who have lives ahead of them, and it just underscores the fact that the humanity that this is taken away. As Elon mentioned earlier, Yaron Leshinsky was a Christian, Jewish Christian. Our friends over at CBN just did an interview with a member of his congregation who talked about how just wonderful he was, and Sarah Lynn Milgram was a U.S. citizen as well. So these are it just drives home the fact these are real people with real lives ahead of them.
Was there any evidence yet to suggest that they specifically were targeted, or were they just shot because they were coming out of this Jewish museum?
Yeah, I think that's going to be determined. Right now, the charges on Elias Rodriguez, he was charged just this afternoon, about an hour ago. He was charged with murder of foreign officials, causing the death of a person through the use of a firearm, the discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence, and 2 counts of first-degree murder. So those are the initial charges, and I think as more comes to light, they'll put on. But the fact remains is, one, it was at the Capitol Jewish Museum, and they were Israeli embassy officials, and the attacker yelled "Free Palestine" after he.
I would have to think that this is ultimately going to be a case of terrorism, domestic terrorism. It would have to be.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And of course, we know a little bit about that. We had one at our own building a little over a dozen years ago. All right, Quena, I want to go to you because you're kind of been in the spotlight of what's been happening in our nation's capital this week. You've spent a lot of time in congressional offices in recent weeks leading up to the vote that took place early this morning. Now, we talked about this at the top of the program, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into this because there were some things that we were working on that we have been calling on people to weigh in on. Number one is total defunding of Planned Parenthood or abortion-providing organizations. That happened. We also wanted to see the defunding of any type of government dollars, taxpayer money, going to transgender procedures. That was not in there until the final hours of the bill last night. So what can you tell us about the final posture of the bill?
Oh, Tony, it's always great to nerd out and tell people what's been going on in Washington for months. FRC has been advocating, as you said, to defund gender transition procedures and defund large abortion providers. And really, when we say defund, it's not about taking money away from them. It's about removing taxpayer liability to pay them. Abortion providers like Planned Parenthood receive hundreds of millions of dollars a year from the taxpayers. And this is abhorrent for those of us who are pro-life because their main business is abortion. And so it's been vitally important that this Republican Congress, that this Republican and pro-life administration and Congress working together remove taxpayer funding from abortion providers and remove taxpayer funding from gender transition procedures, which we know, and
Let me put a number on
from
that. Let me put a number on that just so people know what we're talking about here. Last year, $800 million is what Planned Parenthood, just Planned Parenthood, that's not other organizations, that's just Planned Parenthood. So that's a lot of dollars.
Yes, and last year, by the way, Planned Parenthood's political arm spent almost $80 million against President Trump. So it's a very politicized and very abortion-focused organization. It really does not deserve taxpayer funding.
All right, but Planned Parenthood also getting into the transgender programs, getting money there as well. But that now is removed from Medicare and Medicaid, or Medicaid, and other forms of government funding. So taxpayers are not going to be facilitating these experimental drugs and these irreversible surgeries on youth or anyone else.
That's right. Until yesterday, it looked like that would come out of the House, but only meaning that the taxpayer would not be paying for these experiments on children, on young people under the age of 18. And last night, the House of Representatives amended that. Taxpayers need not pay for gender transition procedures, which are really experimental, as you say, for anyone.
And again, I just want to commend our listeners and viewers. Tens of thousands of you took action, and your voice was heard. I had conversations with the speaker about this, and this, as Quena was talking about, was added in what's called the manager's amendment at the very late in the process. So some good things coming out. I mean, it's not perfect. We were talking with Congressman Burleson earlier, and even in our messaging, you know, there's more that can be done. Hopefully what we have will be preserved and added to in the Senate. So talk, Quena, just a little bit about that, the next steps.
That's right. Now this bill goes over to the Senate, which has been sort of eagerly awaiting whatever would pass the House. And then it will head to the president's desk if the Senate and the House can agree. So it's got several more steps in it. Now is not to lay off, not the time to take our foot off the gas. And as you say, I and my team have been on the Hill nearly constantly for the last several weeks and frequently in the last several months. But we have supporters who are listeners and viewers of this show who have sent over 100,000 messages so far to Congress to get these provisions into the bill and to get them strengthened in the bill. And they can still do that, Tony. We have a tool online for them to do that.
All right. Jared, let's other news this week. We were talking just earlier with Maine State Representative Laura Libby regarding her case where she has been censured by the Democratic-controlled legislature there because she has brought up the issue of women's sports, transgenderism. This issue of transgenderism, and it's really pivoted. I mean, we're actually getting ready to go into June, which has historically kind of been Pride Month, but we're seeing a lot of corporations pull back. There is a cultural shift that's taking place.
Yeah, there certainly is. Momentum has been going the way of, or seemingly going the way of sanity. It's the question remains, though, I think if it's left to corporations to decide how that goes, they're probably going to find their way going back the other way, because I think this issue is not dead. I think, you know, some of the loudest voices have silenced their voices a little bit and kind of gone underneath. So I think Christians need to be very vigilant on this issue. people like Laurel Libby. You saw what happened to her. They basically told her to shut up.
Right.
And the margin on that censure vote for her is 75 to 70. Now, that's bigger than the margin that's in the U.S. House right now, but is 7%, if I did my math right. It's not huge, and we can't allow the left to have a totalitarian or act like totalitarians when there are plenty of people standing up for what's right, like Laurel Libby.
Well, let me throw that out to both of you, though. When we look at this, and I agree with you, I don't think we could say that we have turned the corner here and that the entire culture has regained common sense. But I do think there's a shift that's taking place. My take is, and I want to hear from both of you, is that it has been because of people like Laurel Libby. It's been because of moms and dads at school board meetings. It's been because of other individuals that refuse to allow the cancel culture to have its way, and they continued to stand and speak truth. And eventually, it got traction.
Yeah, I think being silent does not work. I think we saw that for years and years, and people standing up, people taking action, getting out of their seats, going to the school board meetings, and experiencing losses along the way, but still continuing the fight. I think that's what needs to be done.
And Quena, we saw that really kind of with the House Freedom Caucus pushing back on the one big beautiful bill. It wasn't strong enough, and they had legitimate concerns, and they kept bringing them up, and they refused to support the bill until it got into a posture that it was acceptable. This process of making legislation, I remember back when I was in the legislature, they always called it kind of making sausage. It's not a pretty process. It's kind of ugly, but it's working. I mean, when you see what House Speaker Mike Johnson has been able to do by working through the process, giving everybody a voice, listening instead of ramming things through, at the end of the day, it is working.
People are witnessing in Washington. Trump celebrated a new morning in America, but what we're really witnessing on Capitol Hill is a new morning of transparency. This is the difference between legislating, where deals are made and contending factions push and pull and see where they can reach an equilibrium and where they can move a common goal forward, as they are here, versus political theater, which is what really I think a lot of Americans are used to and quite frankly sick of. So in some ways, even though the process is at times slower, more frustrating, this kind of transparency is really good for the American people to see, oh, there are other people in other parts of the country who have a different viewpoint, and their representatives in Washington are putting forward a different agenda. How is my representative going to be voting? How is my representative going to be negotiating for the things that I sent him or her to Washington to do?
Yeah, I know every time that there is a, like a rule vote that goes down, or the leadership has to pull back a bill, those in the press and others go crazy because that stuff doesn't normally happen unless you have an open, transparent process that allows everyone to bring their voice to the process, have a seat at the table, and work to arrive at consensus. Now, you and I talked about that. This bill is not 100% of what we would put forward. Maybe 90. We're close. It's a lot better than it started out. But that's the process. And I just think we need to be prayerful going into this process, but also realize that, gains are being made along the way.
Yeah, real gains, solid gains, Tony, and gains that are honest and not political theater. It's really important. And folks that are listening and watching can still weigh in by going to frcaction.org/defund and help us continue to hammer that message to the House. Has now passed it. Now it's going to the Senate. Your senators need to hear from you. And by the way, while you're there, you can see how your House member voted.
All right, Quena, you get the last word. And Jared, thanks for joining us.